My friends, what we're seeing now on the screens in Beijing is what I call the theater of geopolitical shadows. Just a few hours ago, President Trump gave a speech at a state banquet, raised a crystal glass, and toasted what he called a lasting special relationship with Xi Jinping. He extended an invitation for Xi to visit the White House on September 24th. Mark this date because it's important. And what the world sees is a gala banquet, but what elite intelligence analysts see is a relentless siege. Come with me. Trump didn't land in Beijing alone. He brought what he himself described as the world's top 30. They're not diplomats, they're the generals of capital. And the strategic advantage here is capitalism as a weapon. Trump is using access to the American market and these CEOs' key technology as a golden leash. In practice, what happens is that the toast is the necessary courtesy before the execution. If China doesn't play by Washington's rules, the American production infrastructure, the engine that sustains the Middle Kingdom, will be out of there in the blink of an eye. The reality in the trenches is that China is not in a position of strength. It is being invited to a partnership that is actually a monitored surrender. Pay attention, you'll understand. The banquet is just for the cameras. But what is being discussed behind the scenes is who holds the keys to global economic oxygen. You who follow me already know this. Before we decode the Achilles heel that is making China bleed, I need to know who here is awake. Do you believe that this toast is the beginning of a new era of peace? Or is it just the silence before the final collapse of the Chinese energy system? Write in the comments. Golden leash or fake? Let's see if you're reading this correctly. I read every analysis because this is where we toast to our strategic awareness. Now subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Stay with me because I'm bringing a series of videos that explain to you as a Brazilian and to you watching from anywhere in the world what's happening right now in the world, and you can be sure of that. This visit by Trump will change the way the world turns. My friends, China is bleeding. And for those who are paying attention, it's not just an invulnerable giant, it's a dependent organism that's running out of air, which is oil. And there's a technical fact that the market is ignoring, but the Pentagon monitors it in real time. China will run out of cheap oil, mark my words, by June 8th. China gets most of its energy from the Persian Gulf, especially from there. With the United States blocking the routes and sanctions suffocating Tehran, China's reserves are decreasing at an alarming rate. June 8th is the expected date for the depletion of low-cost reserves. Oil bought at rock-bottom prices from Iran, previously also bought from Venezuela. And then there's only one bargain basement seller left, Vladimir Putin. Without this fuel, the Chinese industrial machine simply stops. The impact of this is that Xi Jinping is facing an existential dilemma. Either he convinces Iran to give in, or he watches his own country enter an unprecedented energy collapse. And it seems like the miracle has already happened. Xi Jinping apparently starts to throw Iran under the bus. But the wound is not just about energy, it's technological. Trump approved the sale of Nvidia's H200 chips to Chinese companies. But why sell digital gold to your biggest rival? Many of you ask me that. Chibao, how is Trump going to do that? The strategy is Dilliers. The United States wants China to become completely dependent on American architecture for artificial intelligence. If you control the chip, you control the enemy's brain. China tries to copy, tries to reverse engineer, but is always one step behind. They want to be leaders in AI, but today they're addicted to American silicon. And if you think that the Chinese military threat makes up for this economic weakness, look at the facts. The Chinese army is for the most part a paper tiger. That's what the analysts say. The Chinese army is for the most part a paper tiger. They talk about invading Taiwan, but Taiwan knows every weak point of China. So do the American generals. They are armed to the teeth, well-trained, and ready to turn the strait into a graveyard of ships. Xi Jinping knows that a military defeat in Taiwan wouldn't just be a failure, it would mean the immediate end of the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, Xi Jinping has been walking a tightrope in recent months. The fear of defeat is what keeps the peace, not the toast at the banquet. In China, the dictator lasts as long as the regime's morale is high. If he is defeated or loses a ship, a very important asset, he's not like Trump. Trump finishes his term and is then forced out. And now we enter the pressure triangle that defines the 21st century. Trump is holding back the final attack on Iran for a single reason. He is waiting to see if China will hand over the Iranian uranium. Iran is losing between $450 and $500 million a day due to the blockade and sanctions. They're running out of money. China is the only lifeline left for the Iranian dictatorial regime. Trump is telling Xi, use your influence, make Iran hand over the uranium to us. And if you do that, oil will start flowing again, gas prices will drop in the United States before the midterm elections, and your economy will breathe easier. It's a masterstroke. If China gives in, it admits American leadership. If it doesn't, it will be left without energy and face the fury of the 30 CEOs that Trump brought in his delegation. Those businessmen, Elon Musk and company, didn't go there just for pure diplomacy. They're there to warn that supply chains can disappear just like that. And the pandemic taught the West that depending on China is an unacceptable risk. What's happening is that the United States is slowly and painfully pulling capital and technology out of China while offering an honorable exit that is actually a strategic surrender. And the central question is, who gives in first? Trump wants to end the war in Iran to lower gas prices and secure victory in the midterms. And Xi Jinping wants the survival of his regime and continued access to energy. The midterms, for those who don't know, are the midterm elections. Elections that choose either Trump's allies or the opposition in the US Congress and Senate. And all of this is a geopolitical risk game where bluffing can cost an empire. And in this video, we're analyzing exactly the checkmate that China finds itself in. Now, we can't be naive. The danger of this game is real and immediate. There's always money involved. Don't be fooled. Don't be a cheerleader. We're talking about billions and the survival of one of the two powers. We know that the United States is competing directly with China to stay on top of the world. And that's the game. Who will be the new ruler of the world? Don't fool yourself. Trump is not there to save Brazil. If Trump wins against China in this game, yes, Brazil will benefit, the West will benefit, democracies will benefit. Because we have the West, which theoretically upholds democracy, freedom of speech, and capitalism, fighting against China, which is a country governed by a communist party, a dictatorship. And in the end, that's what really matters. Whether democracies will survive or if China's communist dictatorship will prevail and impose its will. Look, the United States is the greatest economic and military power in the world and imposes capitalism, imposes democracy on its main allies. China doesn't. China is not in favor of democracy. China does not admire our Western way of life, our culture, quite the opposite. So my friends, this is not a war for national sovereignty, but for global sovereignty. And when we involve defense technology and AI chips, the risk of espionage and reverse engineering is extremely high. China has what we call the Tesla syndrome. They attract American and Brazilian companies with the promise of a market of billions of consumers, only to nationalize the technology and create local competitors a few years later. We're talking about theft, patent infringement. Look at what happened to Tesla. Look at BYD. It happened to Nike and to Li Ning. The risk of selling H200 chips is giving China AI capability. China has great capability to develop autonomous weapons and could use them against the West. It's a very delicate balance. The United States wants China to be dependent, but they might be feeding the monster. Trump is racing against the clock, betting that economic suffocation will force China to behave before it manages to crack the codes of the new chips. China, on the other hand, is playing for survival, trying to buy time so that its oil reserves don't run dry before it can gain a technological advantage. Taiwan, as always, is in the room. Even if it's not mentioned in the toast, it's the elephant in the room. The United States continues to sell arms to the island, ensuring that the knife is always at Beijing's throat. Public diplomacy is for the cameras. Behind the scenes, there is relentless monitoring of every dollar and every chip that crosses the border. You can't trust the Chinese Communist Party, and Trump knows that better than anyone. He's using courtesy as a mask for a relentless siege. And today, the one who has both knives, or rather both hands, around Beijing's neck is Trump. Trump controls the two most important places for China: Taiwan, which prevents the Chinese Navy from expanding worldwide as a global navy, and the Strait of Hormuz, which controls precisely the flow of oil that China would need to dominate the world. In fact, look at the map that appears on the screen now and see how Taiwan is a gateway that prevents China from expanding to the rest of the world and from taking over the Pacific with its navy. Inevitably, it is forced to pass through this territory, which is controlled by the United States. Over there in the Strait of Hormuz, it's exactly the same thing. My friends, what we are seeing in Beijing in real time, and you won't find this analysis anywhere else, is a reckoning between capital and authoritarianism, democracy and communism. Iran is bleeding $500 million a day. You know that. China is watching the countdown to June 8th approach zero. And American CEOs have their finger on the trigger, ready to move their factories to Vietnam, India, or back to Mexico at the first sign of Chinese betrayal. Geopolitics isn't about friendship, my friends. It's about who has the most endurance and who controls the system's valve. Trump is playing with the election clock and the power of the dollar. Xi Jinping is playing with the survival of a system that depends on oxygen he doesn't produce. That's the problem. In this game of risk, courtesy is just the calm before the storm. Whoever blinks first on June 8th will have lost the war. China has discovered that its mandate of heaven is conditioned by the permission of those who control the planet's technology and energy. And then I ask you in Brazil, what advantage is Brazil getting from this? Brazil could very well receive those factories from around the world that are currently in China. Brazil could also sell the oil that Iran doesn't sell to China. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. We're fighting to see who will be the next president. Eternal elections that never end. Yes, my friends, whoever knows how to play will make a lot of money and will make the nation more prosperous. And over on our platform Sem Censura, we continue these analyses in greater depth, where we can say names, where we are not censored, where we are not monitored. So, if you want to know more, check the description and the first pinned comment. There are already more than 3,000 analysts who fund the dynamic analysis of the world that we bring here for you. So join my community that keeps growing. And we created a channel about series and movies that brings wonderful tips for you to enjoy with your family. We've already filtered it. Sem Cultura Woke, destroying your values on our side. And without the whining that the mainstream media, cinema, and globalists put into content that often ends up feeding your children's minds. Everything already analyzed and selected. We even give tips on what not to watch, or watch it but identify the message behind it. It's very interesting, so go check it out. Link in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that's showing up now, somewhere here on the screen. My friends, it's time to protect our minds. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you next time. Until then.